Tonight, we travel back to a quiet corner of rural Texas, where a young man named Marcus Carey spent his nights, not dreaming of degrees, but quietly, methodically, observing the unseen world. His story isn't one of explosive action, but of patient, profound learning that eventually led him to the innermost, most hushed corridors of the NSA. Settle in as we explore the life of the man who, with nothing but an innate curiosity, became the silent guardian of a digital fortress. This is a story of focus, dedication, and the gentle, humming power of a quiet mind. You don't need to stay awake for the ending. Just let the sounds and the details carry you away. The quiet pull of war games, an expansion. Listen now to the slow, steady hum of a quiet summer night, the sound of insects singing in the tall grass beneath an impossibly vast, dark Texas sky. We begin our story far from the digital battlefield, in the open, unassuming fields of the American South. Yet, this humble quietude held a sharp, constant contrast, the mesmerizing, pixelated glow of a secret, unseen world. The Texas paradox, the land and the limitations. Our focus is on a young man named Marcus, growing up in a landscape defined by paradox, the paradox of country and hood. Imagine a life where the horizon was wide and clear, offering an illusion of boundless possibility. Yet the economic reality was narrow and challenging, enforcing profound limitations. The roots of his family were deeply intertwined with the rural life of Texas, a life demanding hard work, self-reliance, and physical strength just to meet the needs of the day. This was a community of few resources, where aspiration often battled against immense financial barriers. The struggle was not loud or dramatic. It was the quiet, persistent grind of poverty, the constant concern over where the next meal would come from or how to afford the next necessity. Marcus lived in an environment where resourcefulness was a necessity, not a choice. He learned to observe the world with a keen, analytical eye, searching for inefficiencies and seeking any possible leverage in life. The concept of leverage, finding a small input that yields a large, disproportionate output, became an early, unconscious, intellectual pursuit. In his immediate environment, leverage was often physical or communal. But for young Marcus, the world was quietly redefined by a flickering screen, a source of leverage that was purely intellectual. For many, the world ended at the town line. For Marcus, the world began with a single beam of light, the mythos of the machine, the influence of 1983. In the early 1980s, technology was not a ubiquitous presence. It was a distant, almost mythical thing, particularly in financially constrained communities. Computers were rare, expensive, and often locked away in institutions. This scarcity fueled an intense, almost religious curiosity in those who were naturally inquisitive. The barrier of entry to this world was not physical, but intellectual and economic. Then came the film War Games in 1983. Recall the core story. A brilliant young hacker, through a simple dial-up connection, accidentally accesses a United States military supercomputer, initiating a countdown to global thermonuclear war. The movie was far more than entertainment. It was a revelation. It didn't just feature computers, it mythologized them. It showed that the digital realm was a place of immense, silent power, capable of challenging the established order and forcing the hand of nations. For Marcus, the film was a lightning strike. It offered the first glimpse of a world where financial and geographical barriers dissolved, a world accessible only through the mastery of code and logic. It demonstrated that true influence didn't require physical strength, inherited wealth, or conventional credentials. It required only knowledge, the ability to understand, navigate, and exploit a system. The computer was a portal, and Marcus realized that his own hunger for knowledge was the only currency required to enter this new world of invisible power. This hunger drove a constant search for any available machine. He would seek out every opportunity to get near a keyboard, devouring any programming or networking book he could find and taking advantage of whatever limited access the school or a library might offer. Every stolen moment in front of a monitor was an act of personal defiance against the limitations of his economic reality, a persistent pursuit that required him to constantly be innovative in finding ways to learn. The educational barricade and the inevitable trade-off. This growing fascination met the cold, hard reality of the financial barrier. Access to quality computers, specialized technical software, and the necessary advanced education was simply unaffordable. This was the great tension of his youth, an intense intellectual curiosity battling a profound lack of resources. His ambition to master this secret world was constantly tempered by the practical demands of survival. He understood that he needed not just a job, but a career pathway that guaranteed immersion into advanced technology. The civilian path, the traditional university route, was a financial impossibility. The cost of tuition, housing, and textbooks was a barrier too high for his circumstances. Even if he earned a scholarship, the years spent studying would be years he couldn't spend earning or providing stability. The dream of mastering technology was being crushed by the reality of economic exclusion. This constant, relentless search for knowledge, however, eventually led to a sobering, yet liberating realization. If he could not buy his way into the world of advanced technical education, he would have to trade his service for it. He realized that the fastest, most effective way to truly escape the cycle of poverty and acquire the deep, advanced technical education he craved was through the only institution that guaranteed it, regardless of his background. The only viable path, a scholar's commitment. The solution, which seemed both paradoxical and inevitable, lay in the United States military. The military offered a unique and powerful deal. In exchange for absolute commitment and service, it would provide food, safety, shelter, and, most importantly, advanced, classified, technical training in fields like signals intelligence, SIGINT, and cryptology. For Marcus, who was at the time struggling with the profound instability of being poor and homeless, the military was the only viable scholarship. It was the fastest, most certain path out of his circumstances and into the sophisticated, high-stakes technical world he longed to inhabit. The decision was not made out of simple patriotism alone. It was primarily an act of sheer will and intellectual ambition. He was trading the physical uncertainty of his life for the rigid structure of service, all in a fierce pursuit of knowledge. He sought the cryptographic cradle, the classified training centers, often managed by the Navy, where the fundamental keys to the digital kingdom were kept. He was choosing the path of the scholar soldier, viewing his enlistment contract as a technical apprenticeship with the highest stakes. This process required a total surrender of his civilian life and a profound test of trust. Joining the military, particularly in a high-tech field like cryptology, meant submitting to intense background checks and scrutiny, a multi-stage investigation that carried an immense weight of responsibility and demonstrated the gravity of the knowledge he was seeking. The weight of absolute responsibility, from scarcity to secrecy. The journey was now set, from the quiet, unseeing Texas countryside to the shouting, disciplined world of boot camp. The hunger that began with a flickering screen was about to be satisfied, but at a cost far greater than money. The price was absolute security and silence. The world of war games was fictional. The world he was entering was terrifyingly real, where the stakes were not points on a scoreboard, but the security of the nation and the lives of deployed personnel. He was moving from a world where his biggest problems were personal and financial, to a world where his smallest error could have global consequences, a procedural mistake that could compromise an operation or endanger a service member. This psychological burden was immediate and immense. The pivot from a life of resource scarcity to a life entrusted with top-secret information required a complete psychological and spiritual transformation. The military was not just offering education, it was offering access to secrets, the world's most critical, protected secrets. This was the ultimate realization of the promise of the screen. The computer was indeed a portal, but the price of entry was absolute commitment and silence, enforced by the uniform code of military justice. The vast, quiet Texas sky gives way now to the sharp, unfamiliar order of a military training facility. Marcus has made his decision, trading civilian freedom for a path that promises knowledge and structure. The next stage of his journey will be a sensory shock, moving from the open fields to the dense, rigorous environment of Corrie Station, where he will face the ultimate psychological test, proving himself worthy of the nation's highest trust and receiving his top-secret clearance. The sailor is about to pass away from his civilian life and become a cryptographer. Cryptographic cradle, Corrie Station. Listen now to the sharp, sudden sound of a voice raised in command, followed by the perfect, rhythmic stomp of hundreds of boots on asphalt. The world of Marcus Carmichael has been entirely reshaped, trading the fluid, unpredictable reality of civilian life for the rigid, absolute structure of boot camp. Yet, within this physical discipline lay the path to the esoteric, silent world of secrets. The psychological pivot from chaos to control. The immediate sensory shock of boot camp is absolute. The crisp coastal air, the constant shouted orders, the necessity of perfect, immediate obedience. This environment was designed to strip away the old, unstable civilian identity and forge a new one, a disciplined, reliable instrument of service. For Marcus, this transition was more than physical discipline. It was a profound psychological pivot. He moved, in a matter of weeks, from a state of being poor and homeless, a life defined by lack of safety and constant instability, to a life defined by guaranteed shelter, sustenance, and purpose. The sheer stability offered by the military was, in itself, a form of healing. The anxiety of survival was replaced by the anxiety of perfection and procedural adherence. This pivot culminated in the move to Corrie Station in Pensacola, Florida, the legendary training ground for the United States Navy's cryptologic technicians. This was the cryptographic cradle, where young minds were initiated into the world of electronic warfare and signals intelligence, SIGINT. The weight of absolute trust, the top secret clearance. Before classified training could begin, however, there was the essential hurdle, the granting of a top secret clearance, often accompanied by special compartmented information, SCI, access. This was the moment of ultimate existential trust. Imagine the psychological weight of this process. The government was looking not only at Marcus's history, but at his potential for compromise. Every detail of his life, financial stability, personal relationships, political leanings, and loyalty, was rigorously scrutinized by specialized investigators, a process known as a single-scope background investigation, SSBI. For a young man who had known instability, the granting of this clearance was a transformative moment. It signified that the most powerful entities in the world had deemed him absolutely trustworthy with the nation's most sensitive information. He was given a clearance level that was literally higher than the vast majority of citizens and politicians. This was the government's way of saying, "We believe in your loyalty and your silence." The clearance was the true key to the digital kingdom. It was the passage from the unclassified world into the realm of shadows, secrets, and high-stakes communication. The immediate realization was the immense, silent weight of this sudden responsibility, the knowledge that the nation's security now partially rested on his absolute integrity. The abstract world of cryptography and protocol. The core of the training at Corrie Station was cryptographic communications and information assurance. This was far beyond simply operating encryption machines. It was an immersion into the abstract, mathematical, and classified world of secure protocols. He was trained in the methods and procedures for establishing and maintaining secure, classified communications across the globe. This involved three critical components: secure protocols and algorithms, mastering the classified algorithms and complex mathematical procedures used to scramble and unscramble messages, ensuring that high-level communications remained impenetrable to adversarial forces. He was taught to think in terms of mathematical certainty and procedural infallibility. The hardware ecosystem, the crypto chain, understanding the physical crypto systems, the dedicated, hardened devices that house the classified keys and perform the complex encryption and decryption on the fly. He learned the specific handling and destruction protocols for these sensitive devices and the keying material. Global architecture and command systems. Learning how these secure links connected the most critical command centers, from the smallest forward operating base to the central communications hub in the Pentagon, and even the White House Communications Agency protocols. The emphasis was on absolute non-negotiable security. The failure of a single technician to follow protocol, a moment of human weakness, could lead to a massive intelligence breach, potentially compromising ongoing military operations or placing a service member in jeopardy. This psychological burden was immediate and immense. The language of silence and zero-error tolerance. The training hammered home the concept of secure protocols as the language of silence. Marcus was taught that in the world of intelligence, silence is the ultimate defense. Every transmission was a risk. Every protocol was a measure taken to ensure that the message, and only the message, reached its intended recipient. He learned the technical intricacies of various communication mediums, high frequency, HF, ultra high frequency, UHF, and satellite communication, SATCOM, and how to apply the appropriate cryptographic layer to each one. This required a deep, meticulous understanding of physics, radio frequency, RF, propagation, and network architecture. He learned to anticipate external vulnerabilities across the entire electromagnetic spectrum. The psychological discipline involved in this training was relentless. Cryptography requires zero error tolerance. A misplaced digit, a reused key, or a failure to follow destruction protocols could compromise an entire network. This discipline, the need for surgical precision, was a direct and necessary contrast to the chaos he had left behind in his civilian life. He was no longer just a sailor. He was a cryptologic technician, a guardian of secrets, his mind trained to see patterns and secure pathways where others saw only noise. He had been given the gift of advanced technical knowledge, purchased at the price of absolute obedience and confidentiality. The rhythmic chants of the drill sergeants fade now, replaced by the quiet, abstract certainty of secure code. Marcus has been initiated, his mind sharpened, and his clearance granted. The cryptographic cradle has done its work, transforming the curious boy into a trusted guardian. He is about to leave the sheltered training environment of Florida and step onto the vast open ocean, where his theoretical knowledge will be tested in the silent, high-stakes environment of a floating intelligence outpost. The cryptographer is about to become a spy sailor. The NSA's eyes and ears. Life aboard ship. Listen now to the quiet, subtle groan of steel against the relentless pressure of the deep ocean, the only constant sound in the vast, inky blackness of a midnight at sea. Above the waves, a ship moves in silence, its outward appearance that of a standard vessel, but its true purpose is that of a clandestine national security agency asset, a floating, silent intelligence outpost. The new battlefield, the silent sea, and the spectrum war. Marcus's transition from the rigid classrooms and predictable routines of Corrie Station to the unpredictable, demanding reality of life aboard a deployed ship was the final, essential test of his classified training. His role was instantly transformed. He was no longer merely a sailor or a student. He was an NSA asset, an extension of the agency's eyes and ears, carrying the immense weight of his top-secret clearance directly into international waters. The ocean, vast and seemingly empty, is, in fact, a crucial high-stakes battleground for signals intelligence, or SIGINT. Below the waves, submarines communicate. On the surface, adversarial forces conduct complex exercises. And through the atmosphere, sensitive government and military communications traverse the globe via radio frequencies. Marcus's function was to operate the complex, classified systems designed to intercept, analyze, and secure the flow of this information across the waves. His physical environment was one of constant motion and isolation. The subtle, endless rocking of the ship, the confinement of life at sea. But his professional environment was one of hypervigilance and extreme concentration. He worked in secured, shielded compartments, often buried deep within the ship's hull and without windows, monitoring the vast, invisible spectrum of global radio frequency traffic. This compartment was his entire world, a small dark room that held the light of the nation's most crucial intelligence. The spy sailor's mandate, clandestine surveillance, the role of a cryptologic technician, or CT, on an operational platform, is to be an attaché for the National Security Agency, providing crucial, real-time intelligence support to military decision-makers. The essence of the job was clandestine surveillance, listening without being heard, collecting without being detected. They were masters of passive collection, minimizing their own electronic signature while maximizing their ability to scoop up the transmissions of others. Imagine the geographically specific missions that required this level of stealth and expertise. While the specific, classified operations cannot be detailed, the function can be clearly understood through extrapolated, non-classified examples. A ship might be deployed to an area near a developing geopolitical crisis, or positioned off the coast of an adversarial nation conducting a major military exercise. In these scenarios, the vessel becomes a listening post, a platform of immense technical capability. Marcus's task involved a layered, comprehensive mandate: signals interception, utilizing sophisticated, highly directional antennas and state-of-the-art receiving equipment to passively intercept communications. He monitored the airwaves for the telltale signatures of military, governmental, or intelligence transmissions, identifying their source, their frequency, and their intended recipient. Electronic Order of Battle, EOB. Tracking, compiling and updating the Electronic Order of Battle, a real-time, comprehensive database that catalogued the electronic capabilities, locations, and operational patterns of all adversarial platforms being monitored. This was essential for military commanders to understand the true balance of electronic power in the area. Cryptographic support and key management. This was the sacred duty of information assurance. He was responsible for ensuring the absolute security of the ship's own communication channels, managing the classified keys and algorithms that prevented the United States' own transmissions from being compromised by opposing intelligence agencies. This involved precise, time-sensitive key loading and destruction protocols, real-time analysis and fusion, working closely with the ship's intelligence team to quickly filter and process raw signals. This required identifying patterns of life, recognizing indicators of hostile intent, and ensuring that critical, time-sensitive intelligence, often involving warnings of an impending action, was immediately relayed back to Fleet Command or the NSA's headquarters in Maryland. He was a pivotal, unseen link in the global intelligence chain, his dedication to the mission measured by his silence and his technical accuracy. His work was the difference between knowledge and blindness, the technical immersion, global communications architecture. The sheer technical immersion required for this role was extraordinary. Marcus was tasked with mastering the practical application of the very architecture he had studied in theory. This involved navigating the complex, layered world of global radio frequency and communication architecture. His daily life was spent managing an intricate web of communication mediums, each with its own technical demands, vulnerabilities, and cryptographic requirements. High frequency, HF, communications, used for long-range, over-the-horizon transmissions that bounce off the Earth's ionosphere. These signals were heavily encrypted and required highly skilled technicians to maintain stability against the variable nature of the atmosphere. Marcus needed to understand how the physics of the ionosphere itself affected the security and reliability of intelligence gathering, constantly adjusting power and frequency. Ultra-high frequency, UHF, communications, used for shorter-range, line-of-sight communications, essential for ship-to-ship or ship-to-aircraft coordination. These were often time-critical transmissions during fast-paced operations, demanding immediate, perfect cryptographic handling and the ability to detect and counter jamming attempts. Satellite communication, SATCOM, the bedrock of modern global communications. This secure, global network allowed the ship to maintain constant, high-bandwidth communication with the White House, the Pentagon, and the central command centers of the NSA. The satellite link was the ship's lifeline back to the highest echelons of national security, requiring continuous management of dedicated satellite channels and access terminals. Air networking and crypto system integrity, the integration of all these disparate systems into a coherent, secure, and resilient network for sharing intelligence data across the entire platform. This also included the physical management and security of the cryptographic hardware itself, the classified boxes that contain the keys and perform the encryption. This required a practical, real-world understanding of radio frequency propagation, antenna theory, signal processing, and network security protocols far exceeding typical civilian engineering standards. He was experiencing a multi-million-dollar secure network that was constantly exposed to electronic attack, jamming, and monitoring by highly capable foreign intelligence services. The psychological burden of secrets and isolation life aboard the ship brought with it a profound psychological burden, the burden of secrets. Surrounded by thousands of fellow sailors, only a small, highly vetted team knew the true, classified nature of his work. Marcus lived constantly behind a wall of necessary silence, unable to discuss the specifics of his day-to-day duties, the movements of the ship, or the crucial intelligence he was handling. This isolation was compounded by the fact that he knew the real, tangible threats posed by global adversaries. He was directly engaged in the silent, undeclared electronic war that determined the safety of the nation. This constant, high-stakes exposure sharpened his technical skills and deepened his commitment, but it also placed an immense psychological strain on his young mind. He was forced to compartmentalize his knowledge, creating a permanent psychological barrier between his classified world and the unclassified world of his peers. The vibration and the rocking of the ship became the rhythm of his commitment, a physical reminder that he was permanently detached from the stable world he had known, living instead in the volatile, high-stakes realm of clandestine operations. This environment, however demanding, also fostered a unique opportunity, uninterrupted time for focused, advanced study. The next stage, the sea becomes the classroom. The vast, inky sea continues its silent watch, but the ship's secure compartments pulse with the quiet energy of classified communications. The former Texas boy has now become an expert in the language of the airwaves, a master of invisible networks. This technical immersion at sea will serve as the foundation for his future expertise. He will use the quiet, focused hours aboard the ship, in the space between his classified shifts, not for rest, but for an intense, privileged education. This period of self-study and Navy-supported certification will transform him from a cryptologic technician into a certified networking and security engineer, the Jason Bourne of IT. The sea is about to become his ultimate classroom, preparing him for the complex architecture he will soon be building at Fort Meade, Jason Bourne of IT. Education on the high seas. Listen now to the gentle, hypnotic sound of the ship's engines at cruising speed, a low, constant vibration that served as a backdrop to the quiet rhythm of learning. The ocean, vast and isolating, was not a place of distraction, but a sanctuary of intense, focused education, transforming the young sailor into a master engineer. The privilege of education, trading poverty for pedagogy. The unique environment of a deployed ship, operating as a crucial intelligence asset, came with an extraordinary yet silent benefit: privileged access to education and training. The Navy recognized that the complexity of its modern systems required not just operators, but highly credentialed engineers, minds that could troubleshoot, design, and maintain multi-million-dollar communication networks under constant threat. For Marcus, the opportunity was nothing short of miraculous. He had traded the financial impossibility of a traditional education for a system that actively encouraged, supported, and funded continuous technical advancement. While many sailors were engaged in conventional duties, Marcus, in the quiet hours between his classified shifts, was given the space and the resources to pursue a rigorous, challenging curriculum. He often referred to this period as his transformation into the Jason Bourne of IT, a metaphor that captured the blend of intense, specialized knowledge and high-stakes operational experience he was gaining. Like Bourne, he was equipped with skills far beyond the typical civilian scope, skills essential for survival in the shadow world of intelligence, where knowledge was power and encryption was life. The Library of the Night, certifications underway. Imagine the scene: the secure compartment, dark save for the focused glow of a single task lamp. The ship rocks gently beneath him, but Marcus's concentration is absolute. He is poring over thick, complex Cisco networking manuals and advanced programming books, pages filled with diagrams, command structures, and complex protocol logic. This was not casual study, it was an engineering immersion. While serving his active duty commitment, managing and securing the ship's high-frequency HF, ultra-high-frequency UHF, and satellite communication SATCOM systems, he was simultaneously pursuing multiple demanding civilian certifications and a formal degree. He successfully achieved his bachelor's degree, all while fully deployed and operating classified equipment. This academic foundation was immediately coupled with the mastery of industry-leading credentials, most notably the Cisco Certified Network Professional (CCNP) certification. Achieving the CCNP requires deep expertise in managing complex, large-scale networks, including routing, switching, and security implementation. To earn this certification while actively managing a real-world, high-stakes military network provided a level of practical, immersive training that money simply could not buy in the civilian world. His classroom was the ship. His laboratory was the classified network itself, forcing him to instantly apply abstract theory to critical operational practice. The architecture of knowledge. Theory meets high-stakes practice. The education he received was not purely theoretical. It was a rigorous, practical application of the most advanced networking and security principles to the extreme requirements of global military communications. He mastered the architecture of secure, distributed networks, understanding how to keep data flowing and secured across vast distances, often facing jamming attempts and electronic warfare tactics from adversaries. He learned the language of routers, switches, and firewalls at an intimate, foundational level, understanding not just how to configure them, but why they were configured that way to maintain the highest standard of information assurance, IA. He became fluent in networking protocols, knowing their strengths, weaknesses, and common exploits. This privileged education created an information paradox within Marcus. His mind was rapidly entering a state of being one of the most highly credentialed and technically advanced in the field, entrusted with some of the nation's deepest technical secrets. Yet, this ascent was measured against the persistent, quiet struggle of the family he had left behind. The psychological tension, success versus separation. This period of extraordinary personal success on the high seas was constantly shadowed by a profound psychological tension regarding his family in Texas. For Marcus, the personal success was stark and immediate: guaranteed food, physical safety, the structure of command, and the acquisition of priceless education. He had successfully broken the cycle of poverty for himself. However, his family's continued struggle remained a silent burden. He knew that the stability and education he now enjoyed were unattainable for them back home. The vast distance of the ocean amplified this emotional separation, creating a difficult paradox. His success was built on a separation that prevented him from immediately alleviating their daily struggles. His commitment to national security meant silence and distance from his personal life. He was forced to live a dual reality: the high-stakes, technically brilliant world of classified intelligence and the humble, persistent struggle of the community he had left behind. This tension served as a constant motivator, driving him to maximize every educational opportunity available to him, knowing that this knowledge was the ultimate tool for long-term leverage and stability for his entire lineage. The education was not just for him, it was a resource to be brought back home. The quiet preparation for the digital fortress, the continuous, privileged education on the high seas, was the final, quiet stage of Marcus's preparation for the National Security Agency's central mission. He arrived in the military as a curious, smart boy with a hunger for knowledge. He would leave as a highly competent, certified, and operationally experienced engineer. His mastery of both the classified protocols and the most rigorous civilian networking standards positioned him uniquely. He could navigate the esoteric world of signals intelligence, while also understanding the practical, scalable architecture of the commercial internet, a blend of expertise that would be essential in the coming age of cyber warfare. He possessed the technical vocabulary to bridge the civilian and classified worlds. The ship, once just a means of escape and training, had become a technological university, providing a mind capable of understanding and defending the world's most complex networks. The rhythmic vibration of the ship's engines begins to slow now, the distant horizon approaching with a definitive finality. The education on the high seas is complete, the certifications earned, and the degree secured. The time has come to leave the fluid movement of the ocean for the concrete, unassuming headquarters of the world's largest intelligence apparatus. Marcus is about to step inside Fort Meade, where he will take the immense knowledge he gained and use it to build the very digital fortress he was trained to defend. The sailor is ready to become the architect. Fort Meade, building the digital fortress. Listen now to the quiet, subtle sound of wind moving across a vast, unassuming campus in Maryland. We have moved from the rhythmic, isolating motion of the high seas to the colossal, concrete stillness of Fort Meade, the physical and digital heart of the National Security Agency. Here, the stakes are raised from operational risk to existential, strategic necessity, and the secrecy is absolute. Arrival at the heart of the machine. The transition for Marcus from the open ocean and the tactical reality of a deployed ship to the fenced, highly secured campus of Fort Meade was a profound reorientation. It was a step into a world of hyper-secrecy and technological density. The sheer scale of the buildings, unassuming from the outside, yet housing immense arrays of computing power, fiber optic trunk lines, and classified analytical centers within, emphasized the fact that he was now a small, specialized cog in a massive, secretive machine. This machine's purpose was elegantly simple, yet infinitely complex: to collect, process, and protect the most sensitive intelligence in the world. It was a place where thousands of highly skilled individuals operated in compartments of profound classification. A culture where the external world ceased to matter and only the mission held relevance. The psychological pressure here was the reverse of the ocean. It was the pressure of absolute static control, where every door, every process, and every piece of information was meticulously managed. Marcus's initial operational role upon arriving at headquarters was within the Network Operations Center, or NOC. This was the foundational, high-pressure environment responsible for the continuous, flawless functioning of the NSA's internal networks. He was directly involved in managing the agency's vast, proprietary digital infrastructure, a network that was not just separated from, but completely isolated from the public internet. This environment was designed to handle information classified at the highest levels, requiring absolute uptime and zero discernible vulnerability. This proprietary network was a universe unto itself, requiring unique, custom-built tools and security protocols that far exceeded the complexity and hardening requirements of any commercial enterprise. Failure here was not measured in lost revenue, but in compromised national security. Ascent to engineering and the digital trenches. Marcus's technical expertise, sharpened by his service at sea and the rigorous Cisco and academic certifications he achieved, quickly facilitated his ascent to the engineering team. This was the elite group responsible for designing, building, and hardening the very network architecture the NOC maintained. They were the architects of the digital fortress. His time in this role was defined by his foundational contribution to the agency's defensive posture, the creation and optimization of a sophisticated Security Operations Center, or SOC. A Security Operations Center is the defensive heart of any large organization's digital infrastructure. It is the centralized command post where network traffic and system logs are monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for signs of intrusion, attack, or unauthorized activity. For the NSA, however, the SOC was not just a defensive measure. It was the front line of an active, silent war, requiring preemptive intelligence and rapid response capabilities. The creation of this facility was an exercise in extreme security, built upon a principle that defines the entire agency's operational ethos. Nobody trusts nobody. The chilling ethos. Nobody trusts nobody. The phrase, "nobody trusts nobody," is not a sign of generalized paranoia, but a necessary architectural and psychological principle within the intelligence community. The NSA operates under the constant, certain knowledge that the agency is the world's most attacked organization. Adversarial foreign intelligence services, state-sponsored groups, hostile actors, and sophisticated cyber espionage teams are relentlessly, constantly attempting to penetrate its networks. This principle of zero trust is manifested in the network's design, which is not built as a single fortress, but as a series of watertight, segmented layers of absolute isolation. High-side networks, top secret, sensitive compartmented information, SCI. This is the most protected layer, dealing with the nation's deepest intelligence secrets and the classified methods used to acquire them. Access here is minimal, constantly audited, and the network is often physically isolated, air-gapped from lower classification levels to prevent any possible digital contamination. Medium networks, secret, classified information, essential for broader communication and operational planning across military and intelligence branches. These networks are still guarded by multiple redundant security protocols, and traffic is heavily encrypted and inspected. Unclassified networks, NIPRNet, used for routine administration, email, and logistics. While handling no classified data, these networks are still heavily monitored, as any access point is a potential vector for penetration into the higher layers, the adversary's testing ground. The Security Operations Center that Marcus helped build was designed to monitor the activity between these layers, looking for the minute telltale signs of an insider threat, an employee compromised or disgruntled, or an external attack that had successfully navigated one or more security perimeters. His team was responsible for integrating the firewalls, the intrusion detection systems, IDS, and the security information and event management, SIEM, tools that created a unified, intelligent picture of the agency's digital health, capable of detecting abnormal behavior instantly. Guardians of the digital realm and information assurance. The core mission of the NSA is to protect the United States communications and interests. While much of the agency's external work is signals intelligence, collecting information, the defensive work that Marcus was engaged in was equally critical: information assurance, IA. He was part of the silent, high-stakes war against foreign espionage in the corporate and government sectors. The NSA's role is to ensure that the vital communications, intellectual property, and industrial secrets of the nation, especially those related to defense, aerospace, and high-tech manufacturing, are not compromised by adversarial intelligence agencies. This responsibility carries immense weight because of the absolute necessity of protecting means and methods. The term means and methods refers to the specific classified techniques, procedures, and technology used by the NSA to collect intelligence. This is the holy grail of intelligence secrets. If an adversary discovers how the NSA is listening, the frequency, the type of exploit, or the specific cryptographic weakness being targeted, the entire capability is instantly rendered useless, costing the nation years of intelligence and potentially costing people their lives. The chilling, instructive lesson, often used as a cautionary tale within the agency, involves the former case of a high-profile target, perhaps a state leader or a terrorist commander like Osama bin Laden, whose satellite phone was being successfully monitored. When the monitoring success was inadvertently revealed in the public domain, for instance, via a loose-lipped politician like Senator Orrin Hatch mentioning the capability publicly, the adversary immediately changed their communication methods, and the crucial intelligence link was lost forever. Marcus's work was about ensuring that the NSA's own networks, which held the very secrets of these means and methods, were utterly impervious to intrusion. He was building the final digital wall to protect the nation's most sensitive operational secrets. The call to perpetual education. The quiet hum of the Fort Meade servers continues, a rhythmic undercurrent beneath the vast complexity of the proprietary network. Marcus, the former Texas boy, now stands at the very center of the nation's digital defense, a highly skilled engineer whose education has been completely subsidized by his service. His experience has taught him that the constant, relentless nature of the threat requires more than just good engineering. It requires relentless, cutting-edge knowledge and constant skill sharpening. In the world of cyber defense, stagnation means compromise. This realization positioned him perfectly to capitalize on the agency's internal environment of continuous utopian training, the ultimate sandbox where the world's best cybersecurity experts sharpened the edge of the blade. He understood that the best defense is not just hardware, but a mind that is constantly moving faster than the threat. The core mission: Guardians of the Digital Realm. Listen now to the quiet, rhythmic tap of fingers on a keyboard, the sound of a silent war being waged in the dark. We turn our gaze from the architecture of the Security Operations Center to its philosophical core, the ultimate necessary mission of the National Security Agency, defending United States assets in a high-stakes, perpetual conflict. The philosophical core and the strategic mandate. The existence of the National Security Agency is predicated on a philosophical necessity. The United States must maintain supremacy in communications and information security. This is not a matter of corporate advantage. It is the bedrock of national stability, ensuring the continuity of government, the viability of the economy, and the effectiveness of military command and control. The job of the NSA's defensive side, the Information Assurance Directorate, IAD, is to act as the guardians of the digital realm, the silent, unseen force protecting the nation's most sensitive secrets from an array of increasingly sophisticated foreign adversaries. Marcus's work in building the Security Operations Center, SOC, was a direct, tangible manifestation of this core mission. He was not protecting a commercial enterprise's bottom line. He was defending the means by which the government communicates, negotiates, and plans global strategy. This work demanded a complete rejection of complacency and a deep, ingrained understanding that the threat is perpetual and unrelenting. The operational environment at Fort Meade was, therefore, an atmosphere of necessary, high-stakes paranoia, best encapsulated by the recurring phrase that defined the network's very architecture: nobody trusts nobody. The doctrine of zero trust and network segmentation. The nobody trusts nobody concept, previously introduced, is not merely a caution. It is an active, enforced doctrine of zero trust, applied to every aspect of the network's design and operation. The very architecture of the digital fortress assumed that penetration was inevitable, and therefore the network had to be structured to contain and detect attacks at every possible point, preventing a single breach from becoming a total collapse. Imagine the network not as a single solid wall, but as a series of watertight compartments on a massive vessel, separated by multiple redundant security layers. Marcus, as an engineer, was responsible for the integrity of these compartment walls, the firewalls, intrusion detection sensors, and access control lists, ensuring that a breach in one area could not immediately spread to the next. This defensive posture extended across the entire spectrum of classification, requiring meticulous 24 hours a day, 7 days a week monitoring. High-side networks, top secret, sensitive compartmented information, SCI. The highest level of protection, often physically air-gapped from other networks. These networks, containing intelligence on global operations and nuclear capabilities, were assumed to be the prime targets of espionage and required cutting-edge intrusion detection and real-time behavioral analysis tools to monitor every single user interaction. Medium networks, secret, classified information, vital for coordinating the activities of various intelligence, military, and diplomatic components. A breach here could reveal operational details, troop movements, and strategic planning, potentially imperiling personnel and military objectives. Unclassified networks, NIPRNet, SIPRNet, often underestimated. These lower-level networks were constantly probed as the path of least resistance. They served as the entry point for adversaries to test defenses, gather intelligence on personnel, and map the network topology before attempting to jump to a higher security level. The sheer volume of attempted intrusions, probed vulnerabilities, and malicious traffic demanded a relentless defensive posture. Marcus and his team were the silent sentinels, watching the digital perimeter for the smallest, most minute signs of an enemy crossing the wire, knowing that a single compromised account or missed alert could lead to catastrophe. Protecting strategic assets, means and methods. At the heart of the NSA's mission is the concept of protecting United States communications and interests, which often extends to protecting the corporate sector from foreign espionage. The economic security of the nation is intimately tied to its technological superiority, and adversarial intelligence agencies often target high-tech and defense contractors to steal intellectual property and industrial secrets. The most critical and sacred mandate, however, remains the protection of means and methods. Let the significance of this term settle in. Means and methods refers to the highly classified techniques, proprietary technology, and classified procedures the NSA uses to successfully collect intelligence, to listen to monitor, or to penetrate the communication networks of foreign adversaries. The risk here is not abstract. If an enemy discovers the means and methods the NSA uses, they will immediately change their communication methods, rendering billions of dollars of equipment and years of intelligence gathering useless. The cost of exposing means and methods is not merely financial. It is a permanent, strategic loss of intelligence capability and often puts the safety of field operatives and sources at immediate risk. The cautionary tale, the high price of operational silence. Inside the secure walls of Fort Meade, the necessity of operational silence is often underscored by powerful, real-world examples of compromise. One classic, chilling cautionary tale revolves around the successful monitoring of a high-value, highly sought-after target, a state leader or a terrorist commander like Osama bin Laden, who was communicating secretly via an encrypted satellite phone. The NSA, through sophisticated signals intelligence (SIGINT), had successfully gained access to this crucial communications link, providing invaluable, real-time insight into the target's plans and movements. However, when a senior political figure, perhaps former Senator Orrin Hatch, inadvertently disclosed in a public setting that the US government possessed this specific monitoring capability, the result was immediate and catastrophic. The adversary heard the public statement, understood the vulnerability had been exposed, and instantly ceased using that communication method. The intelligence link was immediately severed, forcing the NSA to spend months, even years, attempting to regain the lost intelligence access. This story hammered home the central point of the NSA's defensive mission. The security of the network is synonymous with the security of the intelligence stream itself. The work Marcus was experiencing in the Security Operations Center was the guarantee that this type of compromise, the exposure of means and methods, would not originate from within the NSA's own secure digital walls. The constant, silent war and the need for evolution. The work of a guardian in the digital realm is one of constant, silent war. There are no ceasefires, no treaties, and no public declarations. It is a relentless, global competition played out across fiber optic cables and radio waves, a continuous expenditure of intellectual and financial resources. Marcus's understanding of this reality was sharpened not just by the classified intelligence he saw, but by the relentless sophistication of the attacks his systems had to withstand. He knew that their adversaries were often state-sponsored teams with near-limitless resources, intellectual capacity, and a deep, systemic dedication to penetration and espionage. This pressure environment required more than mere maintenance. It required a commitment to perpetual advancement. A security protocol that works today will be obsolete tomorrow. A defense that is impenetrable this week will be cracked next month. The only way to survive this war is to remain on the cutting edge, to be constantly training, constantly learning, and constantly rebuilding the defenses based on the newest threats and the latest discoveries in the field. The rhythmic sound of the Security Monitoring Center continues, a steady, low hum of vigilance. The mission is clear, the threat is real, and the stakes are the highest in the world. Marcus has absorbed the weight of this responsibility and understands that his expertise must be constantly renewed and amplified. He is now ready to leave the operational center and enter the ultimate internal sandbox, the unparalleled utopian training environment created by the NSA to ensure its personnel are always sharper, smarter, and faster than the world's most determined adversaries. The Guardian is ready to sharpen his blade. The training environment, the ultimate sandbox. Listen now to the quiet whirring of powerful servers, the sound of immense processing power running in isolation, generating knowledge. We step away from the operational front lines and enter a hidden, almost utopian world within the National Security Agency, the ultimate sandbox for cybersecurity experts. The necessity of perpetual advancement, a strategic investment, the core mission of defending the nation's most sensitive information requires a fundamental commitment to perpetual advancement. The adversaries, state-sponsored teams with virtually limitless resources, do not rest, and their methods evolve daily at the breakneck pace of technological discovery. For the NSA, maintaining the edge in this silent global conflict is not optional. It is the defining characteristic of survival. This critical necessity gave rise to an internal training philosophy unlike any other in the world, a system designed to constantly sharpen the edge of the blade held by its technical personnel. For Marcus, now an experienced engineer and architect, this environment was the final, privileged phase of his technical education, a sustained investment in his intellectual capital. The agency understood a profound economic truth. The cost of highly specialized training was utterly insignificant compared to the cost of a single major intelligence breach. Therefore, the NSA invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into the professional development of each key security engineer. This was not merely an employee benefit. It was a strategic investment in national security, viewing highly trained personnel as the most critical defense asset. This financial commitment was a statement. The security personnel are the firewall, the utopian learning ground, the 2-week cycle. Imagine an environment where learning is not a secondary task relegated to optional evening sessions, but a primary professional duty. This was the philosophy that dictated the rhythm of Marcus's work week and the entire technical staff's operational tempo. The schedule was rigorously engineered to prioritize education, working 2 weeks, followed by training 1 week. This sustained, mandatory cycle ensured that the engineers never fell behind the breakneck pace of technological evolution, adversarial tactics, and emerging zero-day vulnerabilities. This commitment created a truly utopian learning ground where access to the best security knowledge in the world was universal and free. SANS Institute Training. SANS is renowned globally for providing the most rigorous deep dive training in information security, digital forensics, and incident response. These intensive, highly practical courses, costing many thousands of dollars each in the civilian world, were provided freely and frequently, ensuring personnel were proficient in the latest tools and techniques for defense and investigation. Cisco Certification Track. Building on his foundational Cisco Certified Network Professional, CCNP, Marcus had access to the highest level certifications, including the legendary Cisco Certified Internetwork Expert, CCIE. This certification requires passing a rigorous, multiple-day lab exam and marks its holder as a true elite expert in network architecture, capable of designing and troubleshooting the most complex networks under extreme pressure. Advanced academic access. Beyond certifications, the agency facilitated the pursuit of higher education, granting access to master's degree programs in areas critical to the mission, such as computer science, information assurance, and advanced cryptography. This total commitment to the education of its personnel created a highly rarefied intellectual atmosphere, a place where the security team was consistently the sharpest and most knowledgeable cohort in the entire world, capable of both building and defending the most complex digital systems. The relentless global competition. Thinking like the enemy. The intense, perpetual nature of this training was driven by the chilling reality of the relentless global competition they faced every single day. Marcus was acutely aware that he and his colleagues were fighting a little behind-the-scenes battle against incredibly sophisticated, well-funded adversaries. This was not a fight against simple script kiddies or generic malware. It was a daily struggle against really smart people, teams employed by hostile nation-states. These were dedicated engineers, mathematicians, and cryptographers whose sole mission was to break through the NSA's defenses and compromise United States interests. This competition instilled a critical philosophy, constant self-assessment, and an urgent need to master new vulnerabilities and exploit techniques before the adversaries did. The defensive team had to know the offensive playbook better than the attackers themselves. This realization dictated that the training environment had to be more than just classrooms. It had to be an immersive, realistic testing ground, a digital battlefield where failure was not punished, but was actively permitted for the sake of learning. It was the only way to inoculate the network against future, unknown threats. The philosophy of constant learning, anticipating the 0 day. The training environment cultivated a culture where curiosity was not only encouraged, but mandated. To survive in the fast-moving world of cyber warfare, Marcus and his colleagues had to reject the idea of mastering a skill and instead embrace the process of constant learning and adaptation. They learned to anticipate the next threat, to look beyond the current software patch and envision the next 0 day vulnerability, a software flaw unknown even to the vendor. This required an ability to think like an adversary, to find the flaw in their own design before it could be exploited by an outside force. This internal scrutiny became a professional obligation, demanding a unique blend of creativity and rigor. This commitment to skill sharpening was an integral part of the service. The agency was demanding an intellectual sacrifice from its engineers, requiring them to constantly push the boundaries of their own knowledge and intellectual capacity. This atmosphere, though demanding, was precisely what Marcus had sought when he traded his civilian life for the military path. It was the ultimate fulfillment of the promise made by the glow of that first computer screen in Texas. The goal was not professional stability, but intellectual growth for the sake of national defense. The theoretical knowledge gained in the classrooms and advanced certifications now required a practical, isolated testing ground where the systems and procedures could be violently tested against realistic, hostile conditions. The ultimate expression of this philosophy and the final destination of this training was the construction of the cyber range. The rhythmic whirring of the cooling fans in the training facility continues, a backdrop to the quiet sound of keyboards and focused thought. The training is comprehensive, the knowledge is cutting edge, but the final step requires action and physical construction. Marcus is about to leave the theoretical classroom for the physical testing ground. He will take the immense resources and the philosophy of constant learning and use them to construct a dedicated, tactile environment, a dojo for digital forensics, where federal agents can be trained to fight the cyber war in the most realistic environment imaginable. The architect of the Security Operations Center is about to become the builder of the ultimate sandbox, transforming theory into highly skilled practice. The Cyber Range, a dojo for digital forensics. Listen now to the quiet, subtle sound of cooling fans and blinking lights, not on a real classified network, but on a perfect, isolated copy. We enter the Cyber Range, a critical, tangible training ground built to replicate the precise, high-fidelity conditions of a real-world, high-stakes cyber attack. The necessity of the cyber range, from theory to tactile skill. The immense conceptual training Marcus received, the science courses, the master's degree access, the constant reading, all prepared the mind for battle. This was the theory of defense. But in the demanding world of cybersecurity and digital forensics, the mind must be immediately supported by tactile, practical skill. You cannot learn to defuse a digital bomb simply by reading a manual. You must practice the procedure in a safe, controlled environment where the consequences of failure are only a valuable lesson. This was the necessity that led to the creation of the cyber range. The goal was simple but profound: to provide a crucial, isolated testing ground where federal agents, digital forensic experts, and investigators from agencies like the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, the Department of Defense, DoD, and the Defense Cybercrime Center, DC3, could practice their craft against the most realistic threats possible without ever compromising an operational network. This facility was a physical manifestation of Marcus's core belief in empowering others with knowledge, transforming abstract concepts into actionable, repeatable procedures. It served as a dojo for digital forensics, a dedicated, high-pressure training space where the edge of the blade could be sharpened daily against live, evolving threats. Building the physical sandbox, emulating reality. While modern cybersecurity training often relies on entirely virtualized ranges, simulations running entirely on cloud infrastructure, Marcus's early critical work at the Defense Cybercrime Center involved building a physical, tangible network mock-up. This hands-on approach was crucial for federal agents who needed to understand the physical reality of a network crime scene, which often involves handling actual devices and understanding physical connection points. Imagine a large, secure room filled with stacks of actual humming equipment. Replicating a critical network environment down to the cable runs and configuration errors that naturally occur in a major enterprise. Cisco gear and routing core, rows of powerful Cisco routers and switches, the exact same models used in critical infrastructure and government networks. This allowed trainees to interact with real-world operating systems, iOS, and command lines, practicing techniques like VLAN hopping and access control list, ACL manipulation in a safe zone, servers and firewalls, multiple physical servers running various operating systems, Linux, Windows Server, and hardened firewalls, Palo Alto, Juniper. This replicated the segmented, layered security architecture of a major enterprise, forcing trainees to understand how an attack traverses multiple security domains. Forensic workstations and collection tools. Dedicated forensic workstations loaded with specialized, often classified, tools for collecting and analyzing evidence, ensuring the chain of custody was maintained. These systems included write blockers and high-speed imaging devices essential for non-destructive data acquisition. This wasn't a computer simulation. It was a live, fully operational network where the trainers could deploy attacks, both automated and manually controlled, and the students could practice live collection, the art of gathering evidence from a running computer system without corrupting the volatile memory or alerting the hostile actor. The setup allowed for total, comprehensive control, ensuring every action taken by the student could be tracked, graded, and reviewed for procedural error. Immersive training for federal agents. The surgical strike. Marcus's genius lay in designing scenarios that were not only technically realistic, but deeply immersive and psychologically intense for the federal agents. These agents were trained to secure a crime scene, often a server room or a corporate office, and collect evidence under pressure on a clock. The training involved intricate, high-stakes tasks that demanded immediate, perfect execution, often within a scenario mimicking a catastrophic, ongoing attack. Live collection procedures. Agents were trained on the exact, classified protocols for performing a live forensic image of a running system, capturing the volatile memory, RAM, and the hard drive data before the attacker could wipe their tracks, or the system was inadvertently shut down. They learned the precise commands and tools needed to maintain cryptographic integrity of the collected evidence. Setting up intrusion, detection, and forensic monitoring. Trainees learned how to rapidly deploy and configure an intrusion detection system, IDS, and an intrusion prevention system, IPS, within the compromised network. This was essential for monitoring the attacker's activities in real time and understanding the full extent of the breach and the adversary's intent. Configuring span ports for passive collection, a practical, advanced networking skill. Learning to quickly set up switched port analyzer, span, or mirror ports on the Cisco switches. This redirects a copy of all network traffic flowing through a compromised segment to the forensic workstation, allowing the analyst to passively monitor the network, a digital wiretap, without the attacker knowing they are being watched. This non-disruptive technique is crucial for intelligence gathering. Restoring chain of custody. The exercise included the meticulous documentation necessary to satisfy legal requirements. Every piece of hardware accessed, every command run, and every forensic image taken had to be meticulously logged to ensure the evidence was legally admissible in a court of law or an intelligence briefing. The ability to perform these actions on the fly, under the psychological pressure of a simulated attack and against a time limit, was the difference between capturing a hostile actor and losing a critical national security asset. The realness of the threat. State-sponsored adversaries. What made the cyber range at the Defense Cybercrime Center so unique and so effective was the uncompromising realness of the threats used in training. Marcus ensured that the scenarios were built around real attacks and live Chinese malware, actual, sophisticated toolsets collected from classified incidents, not generic, theoretical viruses. The students were not battling simplified, generic threats. They were wrestling with the highly sophisticated, state-sponsored toolsets and techniques used by major adversarial intelligence services. This uncompromising realism included sophisticated rootkits and kernel exploits, malicious programs designed to gain complete control over a computer while remaining hidden from traditional operating system controls. Analysts had to learn to look for evidence in the deepest layers of the system, often at the kernel level. Zero-day exploits and custom shellcode. Vulnerabilities unknown to the software vendor, forcing trainees to rely on deep forensic analysis and behavioral anomaly detection, rather than simple, known security patches. Advanced Persistent Threats, APTs. Attacks conducted by long-term, organized adversaries who maintain a hidden, quiet presence in the network for months or years. Students had to learn lateral movement detection, tracing the subtle digital footprints left as the adversary moves from one compromised machine to another. This level of realism taught the federal agents the immense patience, meticulousness, and dedication required to fight an invisible, powerful enemy who operates without the normal rules of engagement. The consequence of a failed exercise in the range was only a learning opportunity. The consequence of failure in the real world was catastrophic loss of national security information and potentially fatal consequences. The quiet art of digital forensics, calculated intelligence. Digital forensics is often described as a quiet art, demanding intense concentration, attention to detail, and a deep understanding of how operating systems and networks function at their lowest, most fundamental levels. It is the application of the scientific method to a digital crime scene. Marcus's design of the range emphasized this quiet dedication and methodical precision. The trainees learned the slow, painstaking process of moving through a compromised network, not with speed, but with surgical precision, collecting every byte of data, tracing every communication packet, and building an irrefutable legal and technical case against the hostile actor. They were taught to see the entire network as a fragile piece of evidence. The environment he built was more than a technical lab. It was a test of character, requiring the students to remain calm and methodical when the digital air around them was thick with a simulated, hostile presence. They learned that the ultimate defense is not brute force, but calculated, patient intelligence, the ability to outthink, not outspend, the adversary. The quiet hum of the servers in the cyber range continues, a low, steady sound of knowledge being generated and skills being mastered. The work of building the ultimate training sandbox is complete, and the generation of digital defenders is being forged. Marcus has now demonstrated his ultimate value to the National Security Agency, not just as an architect and defender, but as a teacher and builder of capability. This passion for empowering others is not confined to the classified world of Fort Meade, however. It defines his life's philosophy, a philosophy he is about to quietly transfer to his own son, demonstrating the power of lateral thinking and code on a very personal scale. The teacher is ready to become a father. The father's legacy, programming homework. Listen now to the quiet, subtle sound of a small keyboard clacking in a suburban home. Not at the colossal headquarters of the National Security Agency, but in the quiet refuge of a father and son's evening ritual. The lesson being taught is not about classified signals intelligence, but about the enduring power of efficiency and lateral thinking delivered through the medium of code. The philosopher of knowledge and the legacy of leverage. Marcus J. Carey's journey from the scarcity of the Texas countryside to the heights of technical mastery at the NSA and the Defense Cybercrime Center was always fueled by one core belief: empowerment through knowledge. He had broken the cycle of poverty by mastering technology, and he knew that this gift of technical skill was the most valuable inheritance he could pass on to his own children. It was the inheritance of leverage, the ability to apply intelligence to vastly reduce effort. His philosophy of parenting was an extension of his security philosophy: equip the future with the best possible tools. The goal was not merely to ensure his son, named Christian, was comfortable, but to instill the same intellectual hunger and lateral thinking that had defined his own ascent. He wanted his son to be a problem solver, a mind that looked beyond the obvious, tedious path to find the most elegant, efficient solution. He was teaching his son how to transcend the work, rather than simply endure it. This profound lesson was delivered, ironically, through the medium of a mundane, often dreaded task: math homework. The Pearl programming story. Transcending tedium. Imagine the scene. Christian, then a young boy, faced with the repetitive, soul-numbing process of completing his assigned math homework. It was a task that required far more endurance than intellectual effort, the kind of monotonous repetition that often stifles a curious mind and breeds resentment toward learning. Marcus, watching this necessary, yet profoundly inefficient process, saw a perfect teaching opportunity to deliver a lifelong concept. He did not want his son to merely do the work. He wanted him to transcend the work by automating it. Marcus introduced Christian to the Perl programming language. Perl, known for its powerful text processing capabilities, its ability to handle complex systems tasks, and its inherent logic-driven structure, was a language Marcus knew intimately from his networking days. The lesson was simple, powerful, and utterly subversive to the traditional classroom. Why do a task 1,000 times when you can teach the machine to do it once? Together, they embarked on a small, profound project, writing a short Perl script to automate Christian's repetitive math homework. The ultimate lesson in efficiency and deconstruction. The process of writing the code became the actual superior lesson. It required Christian to logically deconstruct the math problem, to break down the repetitive procedure into discrete, measurable, and repeatable steps, and then to translate that logic into a structured language that the computer could understand. This forced him to master the procedural logic of the math problem at a much deeper level than simple manual calculation ever could. The code itself was a triumph of efficiency and lateral thinking. Instead of tediously calculating the same type of equation over and over again, the script could generate the randomized input numbers required by the assignment, perfectly simulating the teacher's worksheet, perform the calculation instantly and accurately, utilizing the machine's absolute precision, output the problem and its solution in the exact format required by the teacher, ready to be submitted. The immediate result was astonishing. Christian could complete his homework accurately and quickly, simply by running the Perl script. The father was not encouraging laziness. He was teaching the power of leverage, the principle that 10 minutes of creative, upfront coding can save 10 hours of repetitive, manual labor. The goal was to free up his son's mind for harder, more creative problems. The deeper, more valuable lessons embedded in this exercise were lateral thinking and subversion. Always question the process. Is there a more elegant, systemic way to solve the problem than the prescribed linear method? This is the core of the hacker mindset. Automation as power. Computers are tools of liberation. Mastery of code is the ultimate key to escaping tedium and focusing human ingenuity on complex, creative problems that machines cannot yet solve. The code is the instruction. Writing code requires perfect clarity and logic, forcing the mind to operate with the same zero error, tolerance, and procedural precision required in Marcus's NSA engineering work. The legacy takes root, from Perl to penetration. Testing. This early, powerful introduction to the logic of programming planted an undeniable seed in Christian's young mind. He did not merely learn Perl, he learned the hacker mentality, the spirit of inquisitiveness, curiosity, and critical deconstruction that defines the world's most talented technologists. He internalized the concept that systems are meant to be understood, not just used. The legacy took root quickly, demonstrating a direct, powerful line of influence from father to son. Metasploit on an iPhone. As a teenager, Christian's technical prowess became undeniable. He created a front-end interface for Metasploit, one of the world's most powerful professional-grade penetration testing frameworks, and ran it on an iPhone. This was a profound demonstration of ingenuity, combining cutting-edge mobile technology with advanced, high-level security tools, proving he could master and adapt complex systems outside of their intended environment. The technical eye. He was already seeing the digital world through the highly critical, defensive, and adversarial lens that Marcus had honed at Fort Meade. He was not merely consuming technology. He was actively deconstructing it and understanding its vulnerabilities and operational flaws. This technical maturity led to professional recognition at a remarkably young age. Following his father's footsteps of gaining practical, hands-on experience, Christian secured an internship and subsequent career at Rapid7, a leading cybersecurity firm, and the company behind the very Metasploit framework he had mastered and adapted, successfully launching his own technical career. The ultimate goal of empowerment and fulfillment. For Marcus, watching his son ascend in the security industry was the ultimate fulfillment of his personal mission. He had not just secured his own future. He had secured the future of his legacy through empowerment. He proved that the intellectual hunger that began in poverty could be passed on as a tool for generational freedom. This story is the ultimate example of Marcus's unwavering belief that knowledge is power and technical knowledge is freedom. He had taken the immense, highly advanced lessons learned in the secure corridors of the NSA and distilled them into a simple, beautiful lesson on programming homework, proving that the most profound principles can be taught through the most mundane tasks. The father's journey, which began with the hunger for knowledge in a Texas field, culminated in the quiet joy of seeing that knowledge mastered and amplified by his own son. He had built a digital fortress not just for the nation, but for his family, ensuring his legacy was one of intellectual independence. The quiet sound of the keyboard ceases, the math homework is done, and the programming lesson is complete. The father has passed on his greatest legacy, the mind of an engineer, the heart of a problem solver. Marcus J. Carey's story now quietly recedes, having demonstrated the absolute necessity of the builder. We turn our attention to Jeff Mann, another crucial pioneer of the digital frontier, whose accidental act of defiance would lead to the birth of the NSA's Red Team and complete the necessary duality of the architect and the adversary. The stage is set for a new kind of curiosity, the curious mind and the no such agency. Listen now to the quiet, subtle sound of a highly focused mind at work, not seeking to break in, but seeking to understand and deconstruct. This is the core of the hacker mentality, an intense, almost spiritual curiosity, a relentless need to know how things truly operate from the lowest level of logic upward. The hacker mentality, curiosity as a virtue. We turn our attention now to Jeff Mann, a crucial figure in the early history of the National Security Agency's digital evolution. His story begins not with a desperate search for opportunity, but with a simple, profound curiosity, the defining characteristic of the hacker. The hacker mentality is often profoundly misunderstood. It is not inherently malicious or criminal. It is an intense, critical thinking curiosity that is easily bored by surface-level explanations. It is the desire to look beyond the user interface, past the manual, and deep into the undocumented features and foundational logic of a system. A hacker, by this definition, is simply a person who seeks to master a system by deconstructing it. They see a black box and immediately seek the schematics. This inquisitive nature, this need to see around corners, push boundaries, and discover hidden efficiencies, is precisely the trait that makes for both the most effective adversaries and the most valuable defenders. Jeff Mann possessed this quality in abundance, a young man whose inquiring mind was destined for a place where questions were the most valuable currency. The fortress of Fort Meade, the No Such Agency. This restless, curious mind was drawn inexorably to the secretive, fenced compound in Maryland known as Fort Meade. By the mid-1980s, the facility had achieved a near-mythical status, often referred to within the intelligence community and by those who knew of its existence as the No Such Agency, or NSA. The moniker reflected the depth of its secrecy. Its work was so sensitive that its very nature was often officially unacknowledged or minimized in public statements. The buildings were massive, concrete, and visually unassuming, designed to blend into the surrounding environment while housing the world's most complex cryptographic and signals intelligence (SIGINT) operations. To be an employee here was to step out of the public domain and into a life governed by total compartmentalization and profound confidentiality. The scale of the mission required a commensurate level of control over its human assets. The first step into this secretive, privileged world was the rigorous, almost impossibly deep background check process. The rigorous screening process, an audit of the soul. The mid-1980s represented a period of intense Cold War tension, making the NSA's screening process a matter of absolute national security. The goal was simple: to select individuals of such unwavering loyalty and stability that the risk of espionage, blackmail, or ideological compromise was functionally eliminated. Imagine the psychological immersion of this process. It was a complete, intrusive audit of an individual's entire life, past and present, reaching back years into childhood and extending to every corner of their social and professional network. Investigators did not merely check records. They conducted extensive, in-person interviews with neighbors, teachers, distant relatives, and former associates, asking questions designed to reveal any area of potential weakness, lifestyle and habits, any history of reckless behavior, substance misuse, or excessive debt that could make an individual vulnerable to blackmail or coercion by a hostile intelligence service. The focus was on identifying potential leverage points that an adversary could exploit. Financial stability, a complete audit of all assets and liabilities. Financial instability was viewed as a primary, exploitable vulnerability for espionage, the classic money for secrets exchange. The agency sought individuals who were financially stable and content, political and ideological leanings, any association with foreign political organizations, or any demonstrated ideological shift that might compromise loyalty to the United States and its strategic goals. They sought a quiet, predictable patriotism, associates and relationships, a detailed investigation into the stability and loyalty of spouses, close family, and intimate partners, as these individuals represented secondary vectors of compromise. The process was meticulous, often taking many months, sometimes a year, and was a profound test of patience and honesty. The NSA was looking for quiet, predictable individuals who could withstand immense pressure and maintain perfect operational silence, individuals whose lives contained no hidden flaws for an adversary to exploit. Jeff Mann successfully navigated this crucible of scrutiny, not because he was a known genius in the field was still defining itself, but because he demonstrated the potential for deep loyalty, intellectual integrity, and the critical thinking required to hold the nation's highest secrets. His curiosity was not seen as a risk, but as an intellectual engine that could be harnessed for national service. The search for potential, a blank slate of knowledge. In the nascent stages of the cyber domain, the NSA wasn't necessarily hiring experts in a field that barely existed. The few existing digital systems were highly proprietary and classified. Instead, the agency was hiring for potential, looking for smart, naturally curious people who could be rigorously trained in the highly classified yet ancient art of cryptology. Jeff's initial acceptance into the agency was the start of an internal exploration, a search for a job within the super-secret organization. The massive scale of the agency meant that opportunities were vast, spanning everything from classic code breaking to signals intelligence analysis and information assurance. He was a generalist of potential in a place demanding extreme specialization. He arrived at Fort Meade with his clearance, his curiosity, and the knowledge that his next steps would determine his entire career trajectory within the intelligence community. He was a blank slate with a top-secret stamp, ready to be molded by the most advanced, classified training in the world. His intellectual journey was about to begin in earnest. His path was about to lead him directly into the foundational art of secrecy, the ancient yet critical world of manual cryptography. This would be his first exposure to the rules of perfect security, rules that he would eventually be driven by his curiosity to quietly challenge and ultimately hack through the introduction of disruptive software. The massive, unassuming buildings of Fort Meade stand in quiet testament to the secrets within. Jeff Mann, the curious mind, has passed the ultimate test of trust. He is about to begin his training at the NSA Cryptologic School, where he will dive into the history of secrecy, the manual, painstaking techniques of code making and code breaking. This intense academic discipline will provide the backdrop against which he will accidentally become a pioneer in software cryptography and challenge the rigid old guard of the agency. The hacker is about to meet the paper cryptographer. The paper cryptographer and the toxic ink. Listen now to the quiet, rhythmic scratching of chalk on a large blackboard, the steady sound of a classic, ancient puzzle being solved. We leave the modern network architecture behind and enter the NSA Cryptologic School, where the study of secrecy begins not with computers, but with the painstaking, beautiful simplicity of paper and pen. The Academy of Secrecy, the foundation of security. Jeff Mann's foundational training at the National Security Agency began with a deep academic dive into the history and practice of classical manual cryptography. This discipline, seemingly archaic in the burgeoning digital age of the 1980s, was considered the absolute non-negotiable understanding of information security. The agency's reasoning was clear. To understand how to secure the most complex digital system, one must first understand the elegant, fundamental mathematics of secrecy itself. Imagine the classroom, walls covered with intricate diagrams of ancient ciphers, from the simple Caesar cipher used by the ancient Greeks to the complex mechanical devices like the Enigma machine and the massive, dedicated Cold War rotors that defined the mid-20th century. The training was a rigorous academic journey through centuries of intellectual warfare, teaching the students to think like both the code maker and the code breaker. The focus was on the foundational principles of substitution, swapping letters for other symbols, transposition, rearranging the order of letters, and the use of one-time keys. The curriculum was designed to instill a profound respect for the mathematical certainty that underlies perfect secrecy, a respect that would govern all of Jeff's future, technologically advanced work. The perfect secrecy, the one-time pad, OTP. The centerpiece of this classical training was the one-time pad, or OTP. The OTP is a concept of cryptographic security so powerful that it is often referred to as the perfect cipher or the Shannon perfect cipher. The principle is elegantly simple, yet absolute. A truly random, non-repeating key, the pad, is used exactly once to encrypt a message. Because the key is generated purely by chance, entropy, and is used only one time, the resulting cipher is mathematically unbreakable. There is no pattern, no frequency analysis, and no amount of computing power that can decipher the message without the key. The secrecy relies only on the perfect randomness and the single-use nature of the key, a concept formally proven by Claude Shannon. This system defined the highest level of absolute security for crucial Cold War communication, where failure was not an option. Jeff was trained in the meticulous, painstaking manual procedures required to use this system correctly, procedures which involved manual arithmetic, often modular arithmetic, perfect alignment of the key and the plaintext, and total, physical security of the physical key. The imagery of the Cold War, spy, and procedural failure. The training brought with it a vivid introduction to the imagery of the Cold War spy, a world where the physical security of paper was paramount. Imagine the dramatic, hushed realities associated with the one-time pad, rice paper, and instant destruction. The pads themselves were often printed on rice paper or flash paper, specifically designed to be easily destroyed, chewed, swallowed, or instantly dissolved in water or chemicals in case of capture. The value of the key was so high that its immediate, absolute disposal was a paramount, life or passing procedure. The exchange and the code. The mental image was of agents meeting under the cloak of darkness, exchanging briefcases that contained not weapons, but small booklets of random, non-repeating numbers, the OTP keys, each page worth the highest level of national security. The procedural vulnerability. The trainees were taught that while the math was perfect, the system was always vulnerable to procedural failure. Using the same key twice, key reuse, accidentally misaligning the pad and the message, or failing to completely destroy a used page. This human error was the only way to break the perfect cipher. This was the environment that instilled in Jeff a deep, practical understanding that security often resides in the most mundane, physical procedures, and that human error is always the weakest link, even in a system of perfect cryptographic security. The bizarre truth of the toxic ink, the extremes of control. To further underscore the sheer intensity and high-stakes reality of Cold War secrecy, the trainees were often introduced to bizarre, true stories from the history of intelligence that demonstrated the extremes of physical control. One such anecdote concerned the manufacturing process of the toxic ink production run. This was not a matter of a simple pen. The ink used in some classified contexts, including the printing of certain sensitive materials or the creation of certain pads, was formulated with materials that, under the most stringent security requirements, had to be carefully controlled and tracked. In one particular, documented historical incident, a batch of ink used for highly sensitive applications was found to have a bizarre toxicity profile or an unexpected chemical characteristic. This accidental chemical complexity forced an emergency, complex security procedure to recall or manage all materials printed with this ink, not due to a cryptographic vulnerability, but a physical contaminant risk. The cost and logistical nightmare were immense, extending to security checks on every individual who had handled the materials. The detail, while strange, serves a crucial purpose. It demonstrates the absolute extremes of physical security and control that the agency had to maintain over every single component, from the paper and the ink to the printing press, to the final key, involved in the cryptographic process. The physical world of intelligence was as complex, dangerous, and often as unpredictable as the digital world. The seeds of digital disruption, hacking the physical Jeffman, the curious mind, absorbed all of this. He mastered the classical ciphers, understood the perfect mathematical certainty of the OTP, and internalized the need for absolute procedural adherence. However, he arrived at the NSA on the cusp of a major technological revolution. While he was studying paper pads, the world outside was beginning to embrace the floppy disk, the personal computer, and the fluidity of software. The mechanical, physical world of cryptography was rapidly nearing its end to the fluid, fast, and often chaotic world of software. The intellectual tension was immense. The old guard of the NSA, composed of seasoned cryptographers and signals intelligence officers, were deeply invested in the physical, hardware-centric systems they had always trusted. They viewed software as inherently insecure and unreliable. The new generation, including Jeff, saw the potential for the speed, efficiency, and cost-effectiveness of software-based crypto. Jeff's time in the cryptologic school instilled the foundation, the what of perfect security. The challenge that was about to arrive on his desk would force him to ask the how in the context of the new digital reality, inadvertently leading him to commit his first act of hacking the process at the NSA. The chalk scratches fade now. The lessons of ancient secrecy are complete. Jeffman has mastered the absolute security of the one-time pad, but his mind is already questioning the limitations of its physical form. A simple, seemingly naive request from a customer is about to arrive, asking for a convenience that the old guard considered impossible. Jeff is about to face the bureaucratic resistance of an agency built on hardware trust, and, in solving the problem, will fundamentally change the way the NSA thought about software crypto. The paper cryptographer is about to become a digital pioneer, hacking the process. The first software crypto. Listen now to the quiet, subtle whirring sound of a computer's central processing unit, and the gentle, rhythmic click of a floppy disk drive engaging. This small, mundane sound signals a massive, unacknowledged shift, the moment the old guard of hardware-centric secrecy was confronted by the revolutionary, convenient power of software. The request for convenience and the hardware dogma. In the year 1987, the world of the National Security Agency, NSA, was still rigidly defined by the Cold War-era philosophy that absolute security resided in specialized hardware. Crypto systems were physical machines, hardened, classified boxes that housed the secret keys and performed the complex encryption and decryption functions. The idea of trusting software running on a commercial off-the-shelf, COTS, a computer with classified material, was considered risky, if not outright reckless. The logic was simple. If you control the physical box, you control the secrecy. Jeff Mann, having just completed his deep dive into the perfect security of the one-time pad, OTP, was operating within this rigid, hardware-focused culture. His own professional curiosity, however, had been piqued by the inherent inefficiency and logistical nightmares he had witnessed with paper pads. The catalyst for change came in the form of a naive yet bold request from a customer, an end user within the agency, or a related intelligence component. This customer, weary of the archaic, manual, and often error-prone procedures of the paper OTP, asked a simple, revolutionary question. Can we move the one-time pad from paper to a floppy disk? This request was revolutionary because it asked the agency to abandon a centuries-old physical procedure for a digital convenience. It was an immediate confrontation between the perfect, proven security of paper and the speed, accessibility, and cost-effectiveness of software. A revolutionary act against the old guard and bureaucracy. For the senior management and the old guard cryptographers, the request was met with intense bureaucratic resistance and skepticism. They viewed the paper OTP as sacred. Its physical, immediate destruction upon use was the absolute guarantee of non-reuse and security. A floppy disk, they argued, could be easily copied, misplaced, or corrupted. The physical security of paper was inherently easier to verify than the digital security of a file. The underlying fear was that adopting software-based crypto would introduce unforeseen vulnerabilities, potential flaws in the code itself, backdoors, or simple human errors in file handling that would compromise the mathematical perfection of the OTP. The integrity of the algorithm was never the problem. The integrity of the implementation was the overwhelming concern. But Jeff Mann saw the request not as a threat, but as an engineering challenge. He realized that the future of secure communications would inevitably be software-defined, and that the NSA needed to solve the problems of digital security now, before the entire world bypassed their slow, hardware-centric procedures. He decided to proceed, accepting the technical challenge, and implicitly the political risk of hacking the process. Designing secure software in 1987. Digital destruction. Jeff's task was immense, particularly given the primitive technological constraints of 1987. Command line environment. There was no Windows, no graphical user interface. The program had to run flawlessly in a pure, unforgiving command line environment, demanding absolute user clarity and procedural discipline. No software crypto standard, the entire concept of software implementing classified algorithms was new. There were no established protocols for things like secure key loading, key destruction, or even key management on a hard drive. He had to invent them. Security on a floppy. The entire system needed to be self-contained on a standard 5 1/4 inch floppy disk, creating a portable, secure crypto engine that could not rely on the host computer's often unsecure operating system. The core challenge was emulating the physical destruction of the key on a floppy disk. In the paper world, destruction was simple. You consume the page. In the digital world, simply deleting a file only removes the pointer, leaving the data itself recoverable on the disk. Jeff had to design a secure program that would perform a cryptographically secure wipe of the used key data, overwriting the sectors of the floppy disk with random, non-repeating data multiple times, a form of data sanitization, to ensure that the key material was truly gone and unrecoverable by forensic means. This meticulous design, ensuring that the software was as disciplined as the most seasoned spy burning rice paper, was the key to the project's technical success and the beginning of the information assurance discipline's reliance on software integrity. The realization of hacking the process. Don't do this again. When Jeff presented the finished working program, the reaction from the agency leadership was a mixture of awe and professional terror. The software worked perfectly, creating a highly secure, efficient, and cost-effective way to deploy the OTP in the field. It was undeniable proof of concept. However, the bureaucratic reaction was swift and cautious. They saw not a perfect solution, but a profound risk to their established security paradigm. They were forced to accept the technical efficacy of the program, but the management response was a stern, final directive, which Jeff often quotes, "Don't do this again." This phrase was the ultimate realization for Jeff Mann. I hacked NSA. He hadn't hacked a computer system in the traditional sense. He had hacked the process, the bureaucracy, and the security paradigm of the world's most secretive agency. By demonstrating that a commercial computer running disciplined software could be trusted with the highest level of cryptographic secrecy, he had shown that the old rules, while mathematically sound, were procedurally and technologically obsolete. He had forced a shift in thinking that would eventually define the future of information security within the agency. His quiet act of creating the first software crypto was a rebellion against the stagnation of a system that believed only its own specialized hardware could be trusted. The unstoppable wave and the shift to software-defined security. Despite the management's prohibition, the utility of the software crypto solution was too great to ignore. The wave of digital convenience and efficiency, once unleashed, could not be stopped. The successful implementation, even if officially discouraged, provided undeniable proof that security was not about the container, but about the algorithmic integrity and the procedural discipline embedded in the code. Jeff Mann, the accidental pioneer, had opened the door to the era of software-defined security. The concept of using commercial hardware, like a personal computer, with classified software, was now a demonstrated, proven reality. This initial push would eventually lead to the proliferation of secure software solutions across the intelligence community, accelerating the agency's technical evolution into the cyber age. His work proved that the hacker mentality, the drive to question, deconstruct, and find a more elegant solution, was the true engine of progress, even within the most rigid and secretive institutions. The quiet whirring of the floppy disk ceases now. The program has run, the key has been securely destroyed, and the message has been sent. Jeff Mann's quiet act of technical rebellion has fundamentally changed the conversation about security at Fort Meade. He has experienced the defensive, procedural side of cryptology. But the only way to truly understand security is to understand its opposite, insecurity. His curiosity is about to lead him away from information assurance and toward the offensive, highly challenging world of operations, where he will learn the truth of human error firsthand in a crucial cryptanalysis internship. The defender is about to become a code cracker, cracking our own, the cryptanalysis internship. Listen now to the quiet, subtle sound of a highly focused mind, tracing patterns across a page of dense, random numbers. We leave the world of creating perfect secrecy and enter the realm of breaking it. The crucial, humbling realization that the greatest threat to security is not the adversary's brilliance, but the operator's mistake. The pivot to operations, the duality of security. Jeff Mann's career at the National Security Agency, NSA, was now set for a radical and necessary pivot. He had excelled in information security, InfoSec, the defensive posture of creating and protecting the agency's systems, exemplified by his work on the first software crypto. However, to truly understand the nature of digital defense, one must first master the art of offense, or operations. The agency understood a profound strategic truth. The best defenders are those who can think like the most determined attackers. This philosophy mandated a shift for key technical personnel into cryptanalysis, the study and practice of finding weaknesses in classified or proprietary communication systems. It is the methodical, intellectual work of finding the tiny, exploitable flaw in a seemingly perfect wall of code. Jeff entered the highly specialized cryptanalysis internship, a program designed to turn defensive minds into offensive assets, training them to look for the fatal flaws in systems deployed not by adversaries, but by the United States itself. The central question of self-assessment, humility in defense. The fundamental purpose of this internship was to engage in critical self-assessment and institutional humility. The question guiding the work was profound and challenging. If the NSA is successful at cracking the communications of foreign powers, it is often not because the adversary's cryptographic system is inherently weak, but because the adversary is misusing it, a procedural failure. The cryptanalysis team's mandate was to turn this lens inward and ask, are we, the United States, using our own security procedures correctly? Is there any procedural drift in our own deployments? Are the mathematical certainties of our algorithms being undermined by the uncertainties of human logistics? This required an entirely different psychological approach. It meant shedding the confidence of the InfoSec world and embracing the deep suspicion and methodical patience of the codebreaker. The internship was explicitly designed to be a humbling experience, exposing the pervasive truth that human error is the ultimate vulnerability. The team's work was essential because of the NSA could identify its own operational flaws before an adversary could. The compromise could be contained and corrected preemptively. It was a proactive, highly demanding form of digital risk management, a way of auditing field compliance through the lens of offensive analysis. The illustrative flaw: one-time pad, key, reuse. The central, most powerful lesson of the cryptanalysis internship was driven home by focusing on the one flaw that even a mathematically perfect cipher like the one-time pad, OTP, could not survive: key reuse. Recall the fundamental, non-negotiable rule of the OTP. The random key must be used exactly once. If the key is reused, even partially, the absolute mathematical certainty of the cipher is immediately destroyed. Imagine the perfect analogy. You are given a master lock and a key that can open it. But the key disintegrates immediately after one use. If you manage to use the same key twice, a procedural error, a mathematical relationship is created between the two messages, a mathematical link that allows a cryptanalyst to combine the two ciphertexts. Through algebraic manipulation, specifically adding the ciphertexts modulo 2, the identical key cancels itself out. What remains is a combination of the two plaintext messages, which, through linguistic analysis and frequency charting, can be easily resolved, revealing both messages. The entire secrecy of the system is utterly lost. The problem the cryptanalysis team frequently encountered was not with the design of the OTP, which was flawless, but with its deployment and logistics. In the field, due to logistical complexity, pressure, or simple human exhaustion, the procedural discipline could falter. The team discovered instances where operators facing supply shortages or communication difficulties were using the same OTP key for 30 days when it was designed to be used only once. This was the precise human failure that the cryptanalysts were trained to exploit, and it demonstrated that procedural drift was as dangerous as a faulty algorithm. The agency's greatest enemy was its own human logistics chain. The weight of algorithmic certainty versus operational reality. This exercise introduced Jeff to the profound conflict between theoretical perfection and operational reality. He had been taught that mathematically, a cryptographic system could be perfect, information theoretically secure. But he now saw that no system is stronger than the integrity of its human handlers. The logistics chain, the printing, packaging, and secure delivery of physical OTP booklets across the globe, was the primary attack vector. The stress of maintaining absolute global procedural adherence was a technical debt that the agency was constantly paying. Furthermore, the cryptanalysis work provided a vital lesson in data leakage. Every time a key was reused, a tiny, exploitable piece of information about the key was leaked into the public domain, or, in this case, the analysis domain. The job of the cryptanalyst was to patiently collect these tiny leaks until the accumulated data was sufficient to break the entire system. This concept of incremental data leakage became a core principle in his later cybersecurity work, teaching him that even seemingly insignificant errors, when repeated, lead to catastrophic compromise. The goal was not to make perfect systems, but to make systems that were procedurally fail-safe against the human element. The defender becomes the attacker, the full spectrum view. The internship was a crucible that fundamentally transformed Jeff's perspective. He learned that the most reliable route to intelligence, the best way to understand and improve InfoSec, was to embrace the mindset of the adversary, to look for the lazy corner or the exhausted operator who had compromised the system through simple, procedural error. This experience provided the final piece of the puzzle. He had mastered the theory of perfect security, OTP math, and the reality of human failure, procedural reuse. This unique blend of knowledge positioned him not to manage an existing network, but to test and break all of them. He was now a full-spectrum security expert, uniquely capable of both the creation and the critical assessment of security systems. His tenure in cryptanalysis also illuminated the politics of vulnerability, presenting an agency's own operational failures to senior command required delicate communication and a mountain of irrefutable data. He learned that the messenger of bad news must be impeccable in their findings, as institutional inertia always resists the admission of systemic error. This experience honed his skills not just as a technician, but as a persuasive security advocate, capable of translating complex mathematical flaws into clear, actionable, and politically sensitive procedural mandates. He was now prepared to join a highly specialized, irreverent, and essential group that was quietly forming within the walls of the NSA, a team that would formalize the work of self-assessment and become the agency's first official hacker collective. The sound of the mathematical calculation is complete, the plaintext revealed. Jeff Mann has completed his transformation into a full-spectrum security expert, equally capable of building and breaking. The time for quiet study is over. The rise of the World Wide Web is about to thrust the NSA into a new era of warfare, and Jeff will be needed at the center of the storm, in a small, irreverent group known simply as the Pit, where the agency's first red team will take shape. The codebreaker is about to become the pioneer of the new, offensive digital defense. The Pit, birth of the red team. Listen now to the quiet, subtle sound of a small, irreverent group gathered in a remote corner of the massive National Security Agency headquarters. The date is rapidly approaching the mid-1990s, and the quiet, analog world of intelligence is giving way to a new, chaotic, and unacknowledged domain of warfare, cyberspace. The dawn of the fifth domain, a new battlefield. The 1990s brought about a technological revolution that changed the course of human history and, critically, the course of global warfare. The launch of the Mosaic web browser in 1993 marked the public birth of the World Wide Web, rapidly transforming a scientific network into a global, accessible communication platform. This rapid technological evolution forced the intelligence community to confront a stunning new reality. By 1995, the United States recognized that the traditional domains of warfare, land, sea, air, and space, were no longer sufficient. Cyberspace was formally declared the fifth domain of warfare by military strategists and policymakers. This declaration acknowledged that the digital infrastructure of the nation, its banks, power grids, communication systems, military networks, and intellectual property, was now a legitimate, vulnerable target for hostile state actors. The attack surface had expanded from physical borders to every connected server. The traditional intelligence missions of collecting signals, SIGINT, and protecting communication lines, ComSec, were suddenly insufficient. The NSA realized it needed to understand and fight on this new digital battlefield. This urgent necessity led to the creation of a small, experimental unit tasked with the unthinkable, attacking the United States' own classified networks for the purpose of self-assessment. The System and Network Attack Center, SNAC. This new mission required a new kind of mind, a mind like Jeff Mann, who was trained in both the perfect theory of crypto and the humbling reality of human error. He was chosen to be part of the pioneering group that formed the System and Network Attack Center, or SNAC. The SNAC was conceptually and structurally different from the established information security, InfoSec, groups. Its purpose was not to defend a perimeter, but to find the flaws within it. They were the agency's internal adversaries, tasked with proving that the systems, policies, and personnel of the United States were vulnerable to attack. They operated under the Red Team ethos, assume the breach. Within this center, a small core group of the most curious and irreverent technologists gathered in a cramped, remote office space. They were the ones who truly embraced the hacker mentality, and their physical location quickly earned a legendary, casual name within the agency: the Pit. The culture of the Pit, irreverence and deconstruction. Imagine the contrast: the massive, quiet, bureaucratic, carpeted halls of the NSA surrounding a tiny office that resembled a late-night hacker hangout, a deliberate space of intellectual liberation. The culture of the Pit was one of intellectual intensity, coupled with necessary irreverence. It was a space designed for non-conformity, where critical thinking and technical ability were prized above rank or procedure. The atmosphere was electric with the energy of discovery. The small, highly intelligent team thrived on Mountain Dew and the freedom to pursue the most obscure, challenging technical problems. Their early activities were foundational to the entire concept of internal penetration testing and red teaming at the highest level of government, learning operating systems from the ground up. They did not just use the classified operating systems. They systematically took them apart, line by line, via reverse engineering, to learn exactly how they worked. This included finding undocumented features, hidden command lines, and any residual code left by developers that could be exploited. Gaining root privileges, the Holy Grail. Their goal was always to achieve root or administrator privileges, complete, undetected control on classified networks and critical systems, thereby proving that the established security controls were insufficient and could be bypassed. Internal penetration testing. They began applying their deconstructed knowledge to the agency's own networks, launching ethical, controlled attacks against live, classified networks to find and exploit the vulnerabilities before foreign intelligence could. The team was engaged in a continuous, high-stakes intellectual sparring match, not against an external enemy, but against the very systems they were supposed to protect. Their mission was to break the status quo of blind trust in hardware, the bureaucratic friction and open-source reconnaissance. While the technical work of the Pit was fast, elegant, and effective, the surrounding bureaucracy of the NSA was slow, methodical, and procedural. This created immense friction between the agile hacker collective and the rigid management structure. When the Pit discovered a critical zero-day vulnerability in a major classified system. The process of getting permission to test the exploit and demonstrate the danger to the network involved a multi-month, frustrating procedure. Vulnerability report. The team would document the flaw and the precise exploit method. Management sign-off. The request had to move through multiple levels of senior management, each of whom feared the political risk of officially sanctioning an attack on a live network, even a friendly one. The fear was that the test itself could cause damage or be used against them. The delay and exposure. The weeks and months spent waiting for signatures meant that the vulnerability remained open, and the team's ability to move quickly was severely hampered. This bureaucratic slowness forced the pit to become experts in open source reconnaissance. They had to spend a significant portion of their time scanning open source forums, white papers, and academic research to anticipate the exploits that adversaries were already developing and deploying. They realized they could not wait for permission to learn. They had to master the adversary's anticipated playbook just to keep up. This tension underscored the paradox of intelligence. The need for absolute security often clashed with the necessary speed of technological innovation. The pit existed in the uncomfortable space between these two extremes. The Red Team ethos and the commitment to truth. The work of Jeff Mann and his small, tenacious team was the formal birth of the NSA's Red Team, a concept that would eventually proliferate across the entire government and private sector. The Red Team ethos is simple: assume the breach and prove the vulnerability. They were the agents of realism, constantly reminding the agency that an official policy or a classified piece of hardware was only secure until a talented, highly motivated mind found the one tiny, unpatched, human-created flaw. Their internal penetration tests were the ultimate form of stress testing, forcing the network administrators and system architects to defend their creations against an opponent who knew the rules of the system better than they did. The goal was never malicious. It was a commitment to truth in security. Their success was measured by their ability to break the system reliably and quietly, to force a necessary correction. The quiet hum of the servers in the pit continues, the sound of irreverent genius at work. The team has laid the groundwork for internal vulnerability assessment and established the crucial concept of the Red Team within the world's most powerful intelligence agency. But this period of quiet internal rebellion is about to be abruptly interrupted by a highly visible public event. An attack on a civilian United States government website will unleash a wave of political panic that will lead directly to the collapse of the pit's operational freedom and test the very legal foundation of the NSA's charter. Jeff's work is about to become national news, and he will learn the harsh limits of acting outside the established law. The church proceedings, an eligible receiver's legacy. Listen now to the quiet, sharp sound of a political alarm bell ringing, shattering the necessary silence of the intelligence community. The irreverent work of the pit is about to be violently exposed to the glaring light of public and political scrutiny, leading to a sudden, painful lesson in lawful limitation. The catalyst, the DOJ website, defacement, and political panic. The year is 1996, and the World Wide Web is still a nascent, wild frontier. While Jeff Mann and his team in the pit were focused on the silent, classified war against foreign intelligence, the public internet became the site of a high-profile, symbolic attack. The United States Department of Justice, DOJ website was successfully defaced. Imagine the immediate, seismic panic this caused in Washington, D.C. A government website representing the legal and operational heart of the nation's justice system had been compromised and altered. The defacement itself was crude but highly provocative, reportedly featuring images of Janet Reno, the sitting Attorney General, and even, in some accounts, a likeness of Adolf Hitler. This was not a loss of classified secrets, but a massive political embarrassment and a devastating public demonstration of vulnerability. It proved that the government's visible digital infrastructure was not secure, and the embarrassment was immediate and global. The political urgency of the moment was absolute. The government had to show it could control the fifth domain of warfare, beginning with its own public face. The immediate reaction was to turn to the most capable people available, the hackers and security experts within the National Security Agency. The unseen line, the church proceedings, and domestic prohibition. In the panicked response to the defacement, management within the NSA turned to the pit for immediate assistance. They wanted the SNAC team to apply their world-class expertise, their ability to find vulnerabilities and trace intrusions, to help the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and the Department of Justice understand how the attack occurred and how to prevent it. However, Jeff Mann and his colleagues knew that this well-intentioned request crossed an absolute, non-negotiable legal line. This line was drawn decades earlier in 1975 by the Church Committee proceedings. These proceedings, held by the United States Senate, investigated vast abuses of power by the intelligence community, including widespread, unlawful surveillance of American citizens. The resulting reform mandated a strict legal separation between the NSA's Foreign Intelligence Mission and domestic law enforcement. The NSA Charter, based on these reforms, contained an explicit, absolute prohibition. The agency could not apply its highly specialized intelligence collection or offensive capabilities to United States citizens or domestic systems, even if those systems were government property like the DOJ website. For the pit, the reality was clear. Using their red team skills, developed for foreign intelligence to penetrate or assess the security of the Department of Justice website, was strictly illegal. Their well-intentioned desire to help their domestic partners was legally forbidden by the very charter that permitted the NSA to exist. The harsh fallout, probation, and the supremacy of law. The need for assistance, however, was overwhelming, and the clarity of the law was often blurred in the chaos of a security crisis. Whether the team directly assisted, provided classified tools and methods to the civilian agencies, or merely advised them is complex. But the political fallout was swift and harsh. The agency leadership, facing potential congressional scrutiny and the risk of catastrophic legal exposure, recognized that the simple act of applying NSA capabilities to a domestic system, even in a defensive capacity, constituted an existential legal risk. The consequence was a dramatic, immediate collapse of the pit's operational freedom. The high-level management response was an uncompromising signal to the entire agency. The legal charter is supreme. Operational freedom revoked. The experimental autonomous nature of the pit was ended. The team's ability to quickly test and exploit vulnerabilities within internal networks was severely curtailed, forcing them back into the slow, multi-month bureaucratic sign-off process they had worked so hard to bypass. Innovation was sacrificed for compliance. Security clearance penalties. For individuals like Jeff Mann, who were involved in pushing the boundaries of the internal red teaming, the penalty was personal and immediate. His security clearance was temporarily pulled, and he was placed on probation. This act, the temporary removal of his highest professional credential, was the ultimate signal that, in the intelligence world, process and law override competence. The irony was profound. The agency was punishing the very people who had proven the existence of the vulnerability and possessed the skills to fix it. This event served as a painful, final lesson in the limitations of government service. Competence must always be subordinate to constitutional law. The unacknowledged legacy. Operation Eligible Receiver. The punishment, however, did not erase the profound legacy of the pit. Their work, though curtailed, had produced an essential, unclassified, and highly valued result: proof of vulnerability. The true vindication of Jeff Mann's team came a year later, in 1997, with Operation Eligible Receiver. Eligible Receiver was a landmark, high-level Department of Defense (DoD) exercise designed to simulate a massive, coordinated cyber attack against United States military networks and critical infrastructure. The exercise was created to test the readiness of the military and the government to respond to a full-spectrum digital assault. The core premise of Eligible Receiver was built entirely upon the unclassified notes, technical findings, and penetration reports that the pit had generated during their internal red teaming efforts against the NSA's own networks. The exercise was executed by a designated B team that was tasked with conducting the simulated attack. The outcome was devastating. The B team, using the techniques pioneered by Jeff's group, achieved near total penetration and control of critical military systems, proving the devastating vulnerability of United States digital infrastructure. The exercise confirmed that the warnings and successful internal attacks executed by the pit were not theoretical. They were an accurate, predictive assessment of a catastrophic national security weakness. Cementing the Red Team title and public advocacy Operation Eligible Receiver forced the entire intelligence and defense community to accept the reality that the fifth domain of warfare was real and that the nation was defenseless. The exercise instantly cemented the legacy of Jeff Mann's team as the original NSA Red Team. They were the pioneers who had the courage to look at the classified networks they were supposed to defend and say, "We can gain unauthorized access to this." Their work, though officially curtailed and personally disciplined, became the foundational knowledge that spurred the government to invest billions of monetary units into cyber defense, leading to the creation of the modern United States Cyber Command. They proved that the hacker mentality, the desire to question, deconstruct, and exploit, is the necessary ingredient for absolute security. They taught the intelligence world the hard, valuable lesson that the enemy is often already inside the system, and that the only way to find them is to think like them. The quiet alarm bell of the Department of Justice defacement fades now, replaced by the profound silence of accepted responsibility. Jeff Mann's work, once punished, now quietly defined the future of national security. The story of the NSA's Red Team closes with the ultimate fulfillment of the hacker mentality. Jeff Mann leaves the regulated world of government secrecy and takes his unparalleled knowledge and experience into the civilian sector, continuing his mission to expose vulnerability and champion security. The pioneer is ready to become the public advocate. The quiet conclusion, the architect and the adversary. Listen now to the sound of the digital silence, the gentle, rhythmic hum of the knowledge we have gained. We have followed the parallel paths of Marcus J. Carey, the architect, and Jeff Mann, the adversary, charting their journeys from quiet curiosity to the ultimate mastery of the digital realm. The long, complex story of the National Security Agency's cyber pioneers now reaches its soothing conclusion. The unifying thread, curiosity and control. As the echoes of their stories settle, let us appreciate the single, unifying thread that bound these two men. Intense, unyielding curiosity. Marcus Carey, the boy who escaped the scarcity of rural Texas, saw the computer not as a tool for recreation, but as a portal to leverage and knowledge. His journey was a methodical ascent, built on the disciplined pursuit of credentials, from the top-secret clearance gained at Corrie Station to the Cisco-certified network professional achieved on a rocking ship, and finally, to the construction of the Security Operations Center and the physical cyber range at Fort Meade. His mastery was in building the wall, designing secure, resilient, and highly defensible systems that embodied the principle: nobody trusts nobody. Jeff Mann, the reluctant cryptographer, began with an equally profound curiosity, the need to know the hidden logic of systems. His path was defined by a quiet, internal rebellion, hacking the process. He challenged the old guard by creating the first software crypto, and then mastered the dark art of the attacker in the cryptanalysis internship, proving that human error is the ultimate key reuse. His mastery was in testing the wall, leading the pit, the NSA's original Red Team, whose work proved the devastating vulnerability of the entire nation in Operation Eligible Receiver. Together, they represent the complete necessary cycle of cybersecurity: the builder who creates resilience and the breaker who ensures honesty. Marcus's legacy, the power of architecture. Let the image of the cyber range settle now in your mind. That secure, physical dojo, filled with humming Cisco gear and forensic workstations. This is the heart of Marcus's enduring legacy, the belief that you must train for reality. His work ensures that the federal agents fighting in the digital trenches are not only intellectually prepared, but practically capable of handling live Chinese malware and sophisticated attacks in real time. His life is a demonstration of transcendent ambition, how a determined mind, fueled by the structure of the military, can overcome the profound financial barriers of circumstance. The Perl programming story he taught his son, automating math homework, is the perfect, quiet encapsulation of his philosophy. Knowledge should create leverage. Efficiency is a moral imperative. Marcus built the systems, policies, and training environments that define the modern defensive posture of the world's most targeted organization. He took the immense, abstract weight of national security and gave it a tangible, defensible architecture. Now, recall the quiet tension in the pit, the small room vibrating with Mountain Dew energy and suppressed intellectual genius. This is the core of Jeff's contribution, the courage to speak an uncomfortable truth. His team was the essential internal adversary, whose job was to tell the most powerful institution in the world, "Your systems are not secure." This work demanded immense professional courage, leading to the dramatic fallout of the Department of Justice incident and the temporary loss of his clearance. Yet it was this painful discipline that proved the ultimate point. The law of the land, defined by the church proceedings, must always supersede operational convenience. The vindication of eligible receiver confirms that the red team ethos is not merely aggressive, it is life-saving. It proved that true security requires self-critique, and the only way to avoid catastrophic failure is to constantly test, break, and rebuild. Jeff's journey is a testament to the fact that the most valuable asset in security is not a firewall, but an honest, inquisitive mind. As we conclude, let the profound synthesis of their careers bring a deep, analytical peace to your mind. Their stories teach us that the struggle for security, whether in the quiet networks of the NSA or in the private network of your own life, is governed by a few timeless, soothing principles. Embrace the power of the system. Both Marcus and Jeff mastered complex high-stakes systems, cryptography, networking, and digital forensics. Mastery requires patience and dedication. Let the quiet certainty of their focused study, the CCNP manuals read late at night, the Perl code written for homework, inspire your own dedication to mastering the tools and processes that bring stability to your life. Acknowledge human error. Jeff's work on one-time pad reuse is the ultimate reminder that perfection is only compromised by procedure. The greatest danger is not some complex external force, but the simple internal exhaustion or oversight. Be patient with your own imperfections. Recognize that your systems, your habits, your routines, your boundaries need redundancy and discipline to protect against human frailty. The necessity of the adversary. Marcus needed Jeff, and the builder needed the breaker. The existence of an adversary, whether internal or external, forces growth and strength. Opposition breeds resilience. Do not fear the challenge. Let it reveal the weakness that needs to be secured, the flaw that needs to be patched, and the area of your life that needs to be fortified with greater discipline. Know your boundaries. Jeff's confrontation with the church proceedings proved that there is a line of ethical and legal conduct that must not be crossed, even for a good cause. In your own life, remember that true strength lies in knowing your limitations and boundaries. Rest is not weakness. It is a necessary boundary that prevents the key reuse of exhaustion and compromise. The final, constant truth of this journey is that the digital realm, for all its chaos and speed, is ultimately governed by logic and mathematics. It is a place where every action has a precise consequence, and every defense can be systematically built and tested. Let the complex, high-stakes stories of Marcus and Jeff now dissolve into the quiet certainty of code and logic. The digital architects have laid down their tools, and the red team has ceased its testing. The networks are resilient, the perimeters are watched, and the secrets are secured. Your mind, now filled with the patterns of engineering and the logic of security, can drift into a state of deep, protected rest. The work is done. The vigilance is assured. You are safe. You are secure. May the steady, quiet rhythm of their dedication guide you toward a profound and refreshing sleep. This story is dedicated to illuminating the unseen world of cybersecurity and honoring the pioneers who built the foundation of our digital defense. If this deep dive into the world of Marcus J. Carey and Jeff Mann has brought a sense of quiet fascination and deep rest to your night, we gently invite you to subscribe to our channel. Subscribing helps support the creation of more complex, soothing narratives designed to quiet the mind with detail and perspective. And if you know someone who finds peace in understanding the world's hidden complexity, please consider sharing this episode with them. Thank you for listening. Rest well and securely. Good night.